Hi, I'm Janiessa Norice, and this is Define Design. It appears that the conventional method of communicating with users through an interface has transformed. With AI experiences increasingly dominating the virtual landscape, I have become curious about the implications this may have for writers. Change is constant, and it's no surprise that artificial intelligence could impact society in multiple ways. When it comes to the world of content design, the impact has been major. The idea of designing content appears to be automated, leaving our skills seemingly obsolete. That is, if you're not willing to grow. In my opinion, content has evolved from simple responses from the user. Much like a form, the UI would either instruct or request information as the user completes the flow. Now users have the ability to basically converse with an AI tool to complete a task. And that's where content comes in. Instead of asking the user for information, we are now designing content for the user to converse with the product. The user is able to tell us their needs directly. So, content must draft text that will allow users to make their own decisions. These conversations could be simple, like a chatbot experience, or expand to phrases or full sentences in an AI experience. Content designers and UX writers would be the champions to design content that helps users once again. But this time, there may be a few differences. To chat more about those differences, I've reached out to a colleague of mine, Tom Reesing. Tom is a senior content designer at Microsoft with over a decade of experience in the world of UX. He has dedicated his career to enhancing user experiences through things like public speaking, developing timeless Figma tools to aid in UX writers for conversational sketching, and so much more. His passion for content design lies in its power to simplify and improve users' daily interactions with technology. Beyond his professional achievements, Tom actively contributes to the community as an advisory board member for the Tennis Outreach Program in Kirkland, Washington State. Tune in to gain insight on how content is evolving and how we can evolve with it. Let's tune in. Hey, everybody. We have Tom Reesing here with us today, and I'm super excited about the conversation we're having. As content design is growing along with technology, we're noticing some different trends. And today we want to discuss conversational sketching specifically, but let's just dive more into that design space. And before I get more into what these things are, I'm going to give Tom the chance to introduce himself. So, hey, Tom, how are you doing?
Hey, Janiessa, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for being on the show today. And so, when we talk about content design in a traditional sense, in plain sense, I would say we're putting the words on the screen. We're navigating, okay, what does the user need to know? Putting it on the screen so we can guide them through the product space, right? But now that we have this AI focus of with pretty much any tech industry, we're noticing that our users are more so interacting with the product more. So having more conversations with the product, for example. And we just want to dive a bit more into like on a content design scale. What are some things that stand out to you in the beginning with making this shift more into a conversational experience than direct golden pack UX experience that we would traditionally do?
Yeah, so I think that's a great topic. And first, Janessa, I just want to say thank you for doing this. I love content design. Is really a kind of a small community, really, and
Yes.
growing, I hope. And I love that you're applying your journalism
Thank
skills
you.
and background towards helping the community grow and learn. So
Thank you so much.
first of all, thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you.
And I think, you know, traditional, what I might call traditional content design, and how content design plays in AI is clearly a topic a lot of people are very interested in right now. I know the content designers I work with at Microsoft are kind of split. I mean, there's a lot of people that are, even though there's a lot of AI work going on at Microsoft, there's a lot of content designers still doing what we might call traditional content design. Like you said, the effect is the words that you see on the screen. And then there's some of us that are really diving into kind of, like you said, like a new world, right? Where of these AI features. And what I love about this conversational sketching exercise that I published to the Figma community like 3 years ago now. But really, the first time I saw the exercise was, say, 10 years ago, just learning what we called UI text writing, is it kind of bridges these two worlds. Like you said, with AI, a lot of times the user experience is a conversation between the person using the system and that app or a
Mm-hmm.
service as it is. And this conversational sketching exercise was designed with conversation with the UX as the very starting point of your design process. And it helps with traditional content design, but it also helps with AI content design as well.
Yeah, it does. I do agree with that. Okay, so I do love that with the idea of having this, like, I don't want to say split focus. I want to say we're getting more avenues within the small world of content design, right? Because now it's more than technical writing, it's more than copywriting, it's more than what we would have been describing as traditional content design, where it's like whatever's on the user interface. It's more of diving into areas of comprehension. We're diving into what are the true needs of our users when they come into this product space. Because if they're going to have a conversation with an AI product, then we kind of need to know what to prompt them with and to show them somewhat of what's available in this space, right? Because I know just on a consumer side and interacting with, say, we can take it down a level from AI and go into a chatbot experience, which is similar, but there is a lot less going on in that space. And so you have these simple conversations in a chatbot, but you're aware, what you can talk to because you're like, okay, this is customer service. It's a chatbot. It's going to prompt me. And then once it can't help me, it'll say you can speak to a person and then we can move further. But in an AI experience, it's a bit more, the user seems to have more options available to them where they can have a bit more control. And it's not just like a pending space, like if you were to call a 1-800 number to wait to get help, it's more like we can assist you and you can accomplish this thing without having to talk to a human being. So I'm really curious as to how you were able to narrow down what would be good scenarios to utilize just on when we're talking in terms of this Figma tool that you've created specifically. How are you able to say, okay, what is a good scenario that we can use just to begin having these conversations and get our ideas rolling and brainstorming to understand how the user would feel in this dynamic so we would know what to write and design for them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I love that you brought up the user needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because for any kind of design, but in content design as a specialty of product design, you know, we're looking to solve a problem for a particular need. Hopefully, we're not just building something for the sake of building something, right? At least that's my goal,
Yeah.
is to do something that helps other people, right? And so when we focus on the user needs, that's a way of us bringing that user-centered design aspect to the product development process. And as designers and content designers, I think that's really one of our key responsibilities, to think about focusing on the user. And then I love that contrast you made between just a plain chatbot and AI, right? Because we've all seen these customer service bots that try to answer questions. I remember, what was I doing the other day? Most of the time, I just ignore them anymore. They pop up, right? They say, "Hi, I'm an agent. I can help you,"
Yes.
right? And the other day I was on some site and I was like, all right, well, I'm on the phone already calling them, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, I'll try the chat, see if that works. So I type in a first message and it's clear the chat bot has no idea of my context. I'm on a page, right? I'm using a product. It gives me the worst possible answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what a lot of people think when they think of that chatbot experience. And what's really changed in the last few years with these large language models, ChatGPT and such, is that whenever you create a chat bot these days, a new one, like the new expectation is that basically it's able to speak, it's able to communicate in your language,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what a large language model does. Is it's trained on a lot of content that's out there already on the internet, and it's just kind of able to repeat back that pattern of standard written English in most cases, and it's like you said, opens up a wide variety of situations. So really going back to the user needs, it's a focus on the particular context. In my call the other day
Mm-hmm.
with a real person, the first thing they do is that, well, they'll ask me for something that identifies me as their customer, right? Something they can bring that context in. And that's what the chatbot couldn't do in that case, right?
Mm-hmm.
It had no idea who I was and how to put me in context, even if it could have you know, respond to my words that I wrote in plain English. The English meant nothing, right? It was gibberish response. I think in a lot of ways that's really the first step in design, and the first step in this, that I propose in this design process in the conversational sketching workshop exercise template is center on the user needs. So like you said, find the scenario.
Diving into finding the scenario and understanding, let's just stay with the Figma exercise for simplicity
Sure.
and understanding, okay, it could be as simple as, I think one of the scenarios is getting a ticket to get on the train. And I take the train in my city a lot. So that's also one of the experiences that has crossed my mind from time to time, typically when I'm complaining, but I digress. But knowing that it should be simple, you go to the machine, you say, I want a ticket. It'll ask you what type of ticket, a day, one trip, two ways, whatever the options are. And you have to keep in mind during this whole flow time, because it's just
Yeah.
like an airline experience, for example. There's a promptness that goes with it. If I know my train is coming in 6 minutes and I just need to put my $2 in the machine to get my ticket, I'm expecting this to go really fast so that I can be on the platform to catch my train. But if it's more so they need my zip code, I have to put in a PIN number if I want to buy a special type of card. Like if there's a membership, there are all these other nuances. So discovering how to simplify them for the user so that they know if this is something that I need to even give my attention to or not in this crunch time. And I think it's super cool how on your exercise, there's the invitation to have the role play, for example. Because what I find is as you do the role play, you're able to simplify the process or remember things that you would forget. Because thinking about getting a train ticket, you're just thinking, okay, I just need a ticket to get on the train. But like I said, there are different types of tickets. Are you going to catch the bus when you get off the train? That's a ticket option. Do you need to come back? Is this a one way? Will you come back the same day or will it be a different day? So being able to get all those little niche things to help the user to get through it really smoothly, I think is really cool. And the more you interact with other partners, I would assume other content designers, whatever, you would notice like, okay, I'm noticing there's a certain speed here, or they're calling out things that I seem to think that weren't as high on priority. Like I wouldn't think that people would consider
Mm-hmm.
their return when
Yeah.
purchasing the ticket too, for example, but they
Right.
are. So now I need to go back to reprioritize that. I just wanted to say that that was super cool and it enhances collaboration. I didn't really have a question with that because I took some time to play
Oh,
around with it. And I was just like, this is really cool because it helps you to really narrow down. And I can kind of see myself as the user and walk through this, but other people are helping me to step outside of that content hat to see what this
yeah.
world truly involves and what options they may truly need. And I think that's super impactful.
Yeah, that's great. I agree that, and I'll have to say, I didn't come up with that ticket purchasing scenario. Like that was that was the initial scenario that I did in a training I just remembered from like 10 years ago when I was first learning UI text design, as we called it. And then it also features in the book by Tori Podmajersky on strategic UX writing. She has like a few hero apps that she talks about throughout the book, and one of them is called the Tap app, and it's a transportation app. And so I want to give that shout out there as well. But it's a very relatable user experience. Like you said, you can really put yourself in that picture again of the
Mm-hmm.
user and their needs and the context. Like if you're about to get on, I'm riding the bus more often these days than the train where I am right now, just because that's the easiest way for me to get from work to home. And you could kind of see the bus coming. And if you haven't bought your ticket yet,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I need to get this done before it comes.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about the language that we need to use, that context is very important, right? It's one thing if people have a lot of time, but when people are under pressure, they're going to miss things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about simple, concise, direct language. It's very common and easy to understand. And when you think about a scenario like this, it really puts it in context for designers and for content designers in general to focus on that user in that situation. And like you said, when you get all your partners involved and you do like a kind of a brainstorming exercise like
Mm-hmm.
this, I think it's very interesting to see how anybody, whether they call themselves an engineer or a product manager or like an interaction designer, once they start to think that put themselves in that situation where they're under that pressure to
Mm-hmm.
buy that ticket in time, then they really do it really helps reinforce that the language does need to be clear and simple and concise and use common words, avoid jargon, all the things we practice all day long, but it really puts it in focus and helps everybody come along on the same page.
When thinking about creating this flow and getting that timeliness and having that concise content, how are you reviewing the error states of things? Like, say, they put in the wrong
Mm-hmm.
PIN number to get their train ticket. How do we get the
Yeah.
user to go back to a certain part in the flow, but still quickly get through their process? So, if we could just talk about some of those underlying processes that might be involved with how the shift is less. I see traditional error states as an opportunity to say, this is what happened, this is what you can or need to do. So, for example, if the file's too large, this is what we accept. So, it's not necessarily telling the user, this is wrong, stop giving us JPEGs, we don't accept those, and just say, this is what we do accept. Make sure that your file is one of these options. That way, there's no harm, no foul, and it's just like, oh, yeah, okay, let me fix that and then go on with my life. But coming into more of a conversational sense, there may be an expectation on the user's end for the computer to have somewhat of the same level of comprehension that they do with certain things. So, how can we address issues such as error states in a sense?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, errors are one of the most common scenarios we end up being asked to work on, I think, and as content designers. And they're really important. And of course, I think it's important to say as well that the best case for an error is to prevent the error, right? I think it's just
Yes,
that's that's
if
the first
possible.
thing to say, right? You know, and what I find is interesting as a content designer is a lot of times if somebody comes to me and they say, we really need your help with this. This error message is hard to understand. We're getting a lot of customer complaints about this, and we really need to improve the product here. What I love is that the request is coming in with that explicit goal to improve the user experience, which is what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And more and more these days, I can see we also talk about meeting the user needs and the business needs.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, when somebody comes to me and they're saying this is very urgent and this is very important for you to look at, we're getting that convergence of the user need and the business need,
Yeah.
right? So It could be they're measuring like something like NPS, the net performance score, right? So that's a lot of times on consumer apps, you get that. How likely are you to recommend this to a friend? 0 to 10, right? If you don't get a 10, what most people, don't know, if you don't get a 10, it's bad, basically.
Yeah.
Anything except 10 is bad. And so they could be saying, from the top down, the leadership's saying we need to increase our NPS scores,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when you come in with that mindset, um, a lot of times sometimes there are things we can do to make the language more simple, more concise. But a lot of times, what I find is what people might not have considered yet, but there's such a focus on this right now that we can consider. So, what if we go back a step,
Mm-hmm.
right? Have we done something to let people know about this before it happens, right?
Yes.
And then when we go to the conversational sketching exercise, you already brought it up, right? What happens is when you talk it through like a real person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, here I am trying to buy a ticket, and somebody says, well, what about my return trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens then is you get people already, that's a design process, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking about the user experience, and you might be changing what the entire group who's working on this product considers important to handle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could have been like, if it's a chat bot, it could have been like an error scenario when somebody says, what about my return trip? And the response from the chat bot's like, sorry, I can't help you with that. Try
Yeah.
something else. Right? Okay, well,
Yeah.
that's pretty simple. It's concise.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
direct. You could consider a message that was less simple, less direct, much more wordy. A lot of the
Yeah.
chatbots respond very wordy. But in the end, if you didn't think about that from the beginning, you're going to end up maybe with that kind of default error message that we know people aren't going to be happy. If somebody's asking that question, that's not the expectation
Mm-hmm.
of the response, right? At that point
Right.
in time, we know people aren't going to be happy. If somebody asks me if I'm going to recommend this product after that, I'm not going to say 10.
Not at all.
And so, I think it goes both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you think about some of these scenarios up front, which is kind of what this conversational flow brainstorming exercise is meant to do, hopefully you avoid some of those unsatisfying, what we might call error scenarios further down the road. And then on the other hand, when you've got a business focus on improving the user experience, maybe to drive some metric like NPS, it gives the whole team the opportunity to go back and think about it again, right? And say, okay, maybe we missed this the first time. Let's think about what's happening here. How did we get to this situation? And is there something we could do that might be a little bit better? So maybe the initial result is you take some really long, wordy answer that's not very helpful and you make it a little more shorter and
Mm-hmm.
simple and more direct and more concise. But we know that's not really going to drive user satisfaction in that situation, right? What we really need to do is, if we can't make even a minor tweak to make that better at that point in time, at least we can start that conversation and maybe that design process for really improving the user satisfaction.
Okay. Who are some of the partners that you would collaborate with? And what do you think are some of the methods that you would try to execute or introduce in order to solve the problem?
Yeah, well, I would break this up into the two parts, right?
Okay.
So, we've got this kind of, let's say we're in the early design stage with the workshop and the brainstorming. What I love about this design of this workshop is that you could really bring anybody in. And you should bring whoever's an interested party in moving this forward, right? So typically when I'm working on a feature and on a product at Microsoft right now, we've got our standard roles. We've got a product manager generally involved who's a lot of times writing the specification. We've got a designer and we've got an engineer at the least, right? So pretty much any feature is going to have those three. And then I think you get into some kind of specialties, right? Like content design is basically a specialty. Every feature is not necessarily going to have a content designer, but
True.
if a content designer is involved, normally those other partners are involved too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you might have a user researcher. Hopefully, I think the best situation is if I'm working on a feature, there's a user researcher because we get to those user needs and we get to
Mm-hmm.
those user scenarios, like we say. And a lot of times for an exercise like this, they're an absolutely great partner.
Absolutely.
And they might even extend this type of thinking out to real users, right? And help you connect and get beyond even that feature crew. But beyond that, anybody could be involved. It could be product marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be customer support. It could be an internal customer. It could be management, right? Like any level of management could participate in this. And because when you're brainstorming, what you're trying to get is the broadest diversity of ideas to bring in to think about these scenarios that you might prioritize or at least do something small to solve so that you're avoiding these disappointed users later on, the missed expectations. The more ideas you have brought into this, the more likely you are to consider that real human aspect of the product.
I love the things that you were mentioning, especially with researchers. They like have a big box of tricks. And it's
Mm,
like you just kind
totally.
of have to talk to them, and then they're like, "Oh, it's kind of like talking to Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus a little bit," because like you just tell them like, "Hey, we have this problem, and like I'm trying to navigate this and that," and like, yeah, they're like, "Oh, we should do this and that," and they click these cool buttons, and then you see this data, and you're like, "Wait a minute!" And so it's super. That's one of the most impactful parts about collaborating with your partners. They have these other disciplines that they focus on, but content touches all of these spaces. So when you're able to have these conversations, all these different lights start coming on and you're able to really drive things in. I really love that. Although some people that I've talked to, whether on or off of the podcast that I'm doing, it's like, some people are anxious when it comes to the AI switch, and some people are embracing it, and some people are more. I would call it the boomer mentality, just like, nope, I'm going to stick to my words, and I'm going to do it the way that I've always done it, and that's it, and that's all. And whatever works for you, and that's fine. But my curiosity just can't cease there. I have to ask so many questions, and knowing that things are changing, but they're also staying the same because we're communicating with the user prior to AI. And now we're still communicating with the user through AI. So just understanding more so how are they feeling about it and how can we can encourage them with it. I remember during my time working in that space and trying to discover what prompts to use for the user, like what encourages them, what would make the most sense in this space, because it's easy to say you can open a document from your phone, but why would you want to do that if you're not a person who always uses Word? Like, what makes it stand out the most? And I really enjoyed talking to other designers in like Windows and M365 just to gauge like how are you guys interacting with their users, and knowing that they had like a lot more users than MySpace did at the time. So I'm like, it must be working. But like seriously, like how are you guys engaging with that? Are there some methods that we could adopt? And of course the terminology, wanting to make sure that everything was in alignment, because I don't work in PowerPoint, for example, so I'm not really sure what they've updated and done these different things. But if we're doing this feature, for example, with this product, I need to know that so that I'm not confusing the user through this AI experience, right? But I didn't want to go too far off on a tangent, but just knowing that like collaboration is really impactful because it helps you from burnout. And it helps everyone, in my opinion, start thinking about how are we communicating? What are our needs? Because a lot of times we can say this is the business need, but we don't understand why the user may not understand why do we have this need, why would I want to use this feature, I'm not getting it. So how can we make it click? How can we prompt the user before getting to it so that they would be excited about it, or they would be more informed so that once they get to the page to use this, then they're like, I know what I'm doing now, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Like that's like the goal, the ultimate goal. And as all these different technologies are emerging, I'm hoping that the conversations I'm having surrounding this are more encouraging to people to just see how your skills still count and they're still being utilized just in a different sense. And that can be a beautiful thing too, because If we're using these AI services to rewrite things or to generate photos, for example, that's a lot easier than trying to learn how to use Photoshop, for example.
Yeah. Well, so I want to. I think you brought up a really important part. Like collaboration's really important. User research is super important.
Mm-hmm.
But this anxiety about AI, honestly, we all feel it. I feel it myself right now, and I want to go back, and share something from my experience where things have changed really quickly in the past for me, and I've had different decisions to make about these things before too. when I was um, when I was in college studying computer science, the first web browser came out. Right? Okay, so back in the ancient days, right? Um, and I thought that was really cool, and I started making web pages immediately, and I think that was part of my writing background too. Like web pages, all of a sudden were a form of communication to me, even more so than the software development that I was doing, the coding, the back end coding, that front end new experience of publishing content to the web
Mm-hmm.
really appealed, I think, to that writer in me back then, even. And then in my senior year, something called Java programming came out, and I took a class in that. And the first job I got was in Java programming because the internet was the hot new thing and Java was the hot new thing. So when I started at a company as a junior developer straight out of college with much more experienced developers there with me, they were willing to embrace the new thing and think about the new thing, and it was changing their world right then, right? But as a junior developer, all of a sudden I had something I could bring to the table that these much more experienced people couldn't. And that was I had taken a class in Java.
Yeah.
I had written a lot of web pages, right? I understood this communication that was happening with the internet, that revolution. And some people chose not to change back then, and they
Mm-hmm.
they continued to do the same type of work they'd done before and not think about the internet. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have said basically, Microsoft at the time wasn't really focused on the internet, right? Continuing to focus on Windows and
Mm-hmm.
Office and things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people have said that was, caused kind of a down period, the failure to adapt in the past. And I think right now we're seeing that at Microsoft, and we're seeing that at other companies as well. That what I hear from Microsoft leadership is we don't want to be there again, right? Like we don't want to be the company that doesn't think about the things that are changing today
Mm-hmm.
and think about how to adapt with all the changes and apply the new thing. But I do want to say that there is quite a lot of anxiety that comes with that. Change is hard, and sometimes it's okay to continue doing things the way you've always done them. Sometimes people are successful. I think it's just that the growth opportunity isn't necessarily there
Yeah.
where things stay the same, right? If you want to continue to grow and to learn and to do new things, there's an opportunity here to look at what's new and how it's changing the world and how you can adapt and apply it to your work. So I love that mindset that you bring up
Thank
here.
you.
And I think it's a very valuable coping tool. Like for anyone who finds themselves challenged to continue doing things the same way as they always want to and it makes it hard, I think they've got two options. They can continue doing things and it might be hard. Maybe they find a way through, or they can also think about how the new thing that comes in could be an opportunity for them. And it's
Yeah.
easy to say and it's harder to do.
Very true. Very true. I take into account just like US history as a whole. Like when we moved into industrialization, a lot of people lost work. And then when we moved
Yeah.
from that into having more like corporations, a lot of people lost work. So these things happen in everybody's industry and world. It's kind of hard to select something that's like layoff proof, so to speak. But it is easier to see, like, can I pick something that I can grow with? because I might get tired of being a hairdresser, for example, but I may not get tired of teaching cosmetology. That may give me more purpose, for example, and just discovering what where do you belong within that world that you have decided to enter. I think that's really vital to just everything about life as a whole, and especially with your 9 to 5. That's just kind of how I see it. I think that we have this tool now, it's AI, that's just what it is, and figure out how it works, how you can work with it. I think that's a cool way to put it. My friend gave me a book. I wish I could remember the title of it, but it's in my other room, so I can't like run off screen. But it's about AI and just all the different spaces that it's being utilized outside of like the simplicity of like Copilot and things like that, like more like building robots and all these different things. And it's just kind of opening my eyes up more into just how people are interacting with it. That's something I've been spending the past few months really focusing on, because I know how I utilize AI and it's not really exciting. It's more like a proofreader for me. So I'm not too huge with my interaction, but I know that I've seen people learning new languages and they'll use AI to help them translate terms of different things that they can take pictures of. And there are so many other cool features that AI has been a part of. So I don't, think that it's a bad thing. You just kind of go through it and you figure out what works for you. And then how can you build on that? I think that's really, really important to always see whatever industry you're in. Okay, but then when I do it, how does it come out? Like when you make your dessert, what's so special about your vanilla cake outside of everyone else's, because everyone has their world famous what have you that they think is just the absolute best. So, and it could taste like everyone else's, but you did it. So I take that with my same, like my skill set and everything moving forward. And to all my listeners and viewers, I hope that they can do the same, because this is just a new thing. There'll be a new thing tomorrow. And you might get along with the new thing tomorrow a lot more than you get along with the thing today. And I noticed, like, when you were saying when you graduated with Java, I have a slight Java story, if I can show my age as well. So mine is more so with JavaScript, but this is the thing. I always thought in my mind I could do engineering. I was 50% correct on that. I'll put it that way. It I don't know. It's like once the numbers start getting involved with the letters, I'm like, wait a minute. This is new. This is new. This is a whole new language. This is not human language. This is robotic now, and I can't get with it. But I remember, for me, first, let me go back. High school, we had a computer science class and we were learning HTML at the time. And then we got into CSS. And I was like, my MySpace page is going to be so fire. Oh my gosh. And so, like, going home and being on my HP and just going in and just having all these cool things and not realizing at the time that it was a job. And I'm like, wow, I'm just going to blame you because your name's Tom. Tom really just psyched all of us into being coders, and we didn't even know. We didn't even know, which is super cool. And then once I started college, that was kind of the time frame where journalism was at a downturn. And the idea of writing for a newspaper and all these things were kind of declining. And there was a rise of blogs, and podcasts were still kind of what your professor would create for notes after class type of thing, right? So there was a shift in that, and then trying to figure out, well, dang it, I just got to college. What do you mean? This isn't a job anymore. How am I supposed to survive? I've already signed my student loans. I'm in it now. I got to figure it out. And knowing, like, okay, well, you can take these same skills into other spaces, and tell different stories or learn how to tell those stories. And I remember when I did my first internship, I had older journalists there, and they were doing the print stuff, but they needed me to put it onto the internet. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then we're having this whole conversation about hashtags and stuff, and they're just like, what is that? Like, and just trying to explain to them like the SEO of it and how to have those key terms to pull people in from search engines. And it was very eye-opening, but it was cool at the same time, because out of that 5-day work week, like you were saying, it's more of me receiving from seniors and how to, position things, and how journalists have been doing these things for pretty much my whole life. I'm just learning. And then they're like, oh, Now we have a website and everyone's looking at me and I'm like, oh, it's my time to shine. This is great. So, that collaboration continues to go and continues to assist. But one other thing I did want to mention from what you were saying, that's one of the things I really enjoyed with Microsoft with having, it's like that reverse mentorship where you can meet with people that are like senior leaders, and it helps you to understand how growth goes in a sense, but then it keeps them more down to earth and grounded in a sense, because it's like these things are changing, or introducing the idea of a mobile first society at the same time, because we've shifted into that too, and knowing that a lot of people do everything on their phones now and a lot less on PC. I'm old because I'm not one of those people yet. I'm always like, I got to do it on my computer. I need a bigger screen. But a lot of people aren't like that. And how can we design our products so that they will still give them the same amount of impact? I know I went off on a couple tangents. Sorry about that. Got excited.
Well, so there's a couple things that you said that I want to pick up on. And I
Mm-hmm.
think one is that, I mentioned when I was straight out of college, what I was contribute, the opportunity I had to contribute because I'd learned some of the new things. And you mentioned kind of the same thing. You had that experience at Microsoft. So over a holiday dinner recently, I saw some of this kind of generational aspects, right? We often
Mm-hmm.
do, right?
Yeah.
When we get together with our family, we have
Oh,
the younger
yeah.
ones and the
Yeah.
older ones. Um, and so, we were at a dinner, and my daughter's in college. She's in her first year at Santa Clara,
Yay.
and um, I have a brother who's a few years older than me and his wife. When we were driving home from dinner, my daughter said, they're all concerned about AI. And she's like, and I don't know. I don't quite see it. And she had told them throughout, that she was in her freshman year, she'd seen a lot of use of AI. That some of her classmates were making their entire presentations with AI. And their teachers were challenging them to try it out. And she's not one to just use it all the time, but she's not one to ignore it either, right? And so I think the message was that there's a lot of hype, right? It's as if everything's changing immediately all at once.
Yeah.
And I think what, a lot of times being that youth brings a different perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And towards, being more experienced. When you're experienced, you feel like you have an expectation that you know how things should be. But learning from youth is very important to me. I think it's just like we need a diversity of perspectives in any different way.
Yeah.
We need a diversity of perspectives from people of different experiences as well. So I think that's well said.
Thank you, Tom. I agree with that too. It keeps you going, keeps you going. Like my papa would say, age is in the mind. So as long as
Mhm.
you're staying active or interested in things, you don't have time to think about being old. And I think that's a really good thing as I'm counting my gray hairs lately. So I was just kind of like, getting up there. Okay, girl. But anyhow, getting back into this Figma exercise that you have created.
Yeah. Should we take a look for the people that are watching?
Yeah, we can totally
We
take a look.
open it up. All right. So I think what I'll do is I'll share my screen. I'll choose the browser window. All right. So what we're at for the people who can't see it is the cover of a template that's available in the Figma community called conversational sketching. So if you go to the Figma community at figma.com and search for conversational sketching, I think this is the only one with that title. Um, and I'll just read out some of it. It's a workshop template for early stage design. Apply this template early in your design explorations as a words only sketch. It's a lightweight sketching process. Apply this process to new experience designs. The only requirement for participation is the ability to read, write, and speak in English. Of course, somebody could translate this, and it would work for other languages as well. And like we talked about, include a variety of participants and perspectives. And the outcomes of this workshop include early identification of conversational language Now, this is the traditional content design, including potential UI titles, descriptions, labels, and button text. We know that. I should probably update this. I think the last time I updated it was almost 3 years ago. The other outcomes include early identification of the conversational language for lots of AI applications as well. We didn't talk about content engineering yet, but part of content engineering is that what we call that system prompt design that's behind the scenes, that's all written in English, and um, the personality of the of AI agents and AI features. So those are all outcomes of this as well. And then, like you mentioned, I've included in this template an example scenario of the TAP app, the transportation app. Um, and this first section here is that scenario for illustration purposes, so people can see how the template can be used as a workshop. And the first step of the workshop is to start with that user need. What's their intention? And in this case, it's that user wants a working pass to ride the train there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in this scenario, we're saying they are an existing subscriber to a service for riding the train. And what they really need to do, and the outcome is to renew that pass. Um, so then you think about their goals. They want to ride the bus, not get stranded, get the cheapest option that will work. These are some goals you could either, as the workshop organizer, write out ahead of time or brainstorm with the group, or maybe pull from your partner's work, like a specification of the feature or some other initial designs done by some other designers. So you've got the user's goals, and then you've got the business goals, because, like we said, we always want to match those two, right? A great feature for a product is going to consider both what the business needs and what the user needs. So the goals of the TAP organization is to know their users, basically, provide passes to the bus riders, make transit the best option, and to collect those fares, right? So those are the business experiences. Um, if we just fast forward here into there's a bunch more instructions here for the person who's running the exercise, and the examples for what to do. The big payoff in the end is this conversation, right? So the heart of the exercise is you want to have many of these conversations between the system and the writer, doing that role playing, like you said, where one person takes the role of the system and one person takes the role of the person who's going to ride the bus, in this case, or whatever that scenario is for your user um, situation. And we take turns. So there might be a group of us. There might be 5 of us together watching 2 people role play, and maybe somebody's taking notes. And we do this multiple times and take turns, change roles, change people, and you can do this with multiple groups at the same time too, breaking out into different areas to focus on it. And the first question is always, how can I help from the system? And then it's up to the participant in the brainstorm to come up with uh, that next response from the writer in this case. And what I've written out here now is I need to buy a pass, and then the system has to determine how to respond. So that's kind of an overview of the experience in the template. Here's I've got another example scenario for you if you want to try it out. It's the Pros Pilot, an AI powered content services platform to assist users in creating, optimizing, curating high quality content. I've written out the goals, um, and this is one that it's left open as kind of the first example experience that your workshop participants could try out the scenario if you don't have a particular scenario in mind for for your user. Would you like to just do a couple back and forths on this, Janessa?
Sure, we could do a couple back and forth. I was going to ask, and also say that this is good because once you do these collaborations with your partners and you have your notes, and then you can share them with the partners that couldn't make it, so that everyone is more in alignment with, okay, a typical conversation. Now we have a visualization. We know how we're communicating, and we can visualize how this will look to carry this forward and bring it into fruition. But yes, let's go ahead. Let's have our scenario.
All right. Well, would you like to be prose pilot, the system in this case, or the writer, the blogger, we'll say in this case?
I'll be the prose pilot this time.
Okay. All right.
How can I help?
All right. I'd like to publish a blog.
What type of blog?
I'm going to write about my experience as a content designer at Microsoft.
Will you have images or media?
Yes.
Okay. Do you need other pages on your blog?
It's just going to be one page.
Okay. Give me one moment to generate.
All right. All right. Okay. Well, that's great. I think I can stop sharing. I think people get the idea there.
Yeah.
On what the template and the idea for the workshop. And thank you for, I do this when I run the workshop too. Whoever is willing to be the first person to go with the role playing, it can feel a little awkward and it can take time to think, and that's okay. And so I think just like we need to have empathy for our users in this scenario, we need to have empathy for the participants in our workshop as well. That this isn't necessarily an easy thing to do to try some of this role playing. It's different than what we normally do in everyday life, right? And everyday work.
Yeah. Everyone doesn't have as much personality as me, so it won't be as exciting with sound effects.
But you know what I find is great, honestly, is you do find that personality. It's what's nice about a workshop like this and a creative workshop like this is you can start to see your coworkers in different light, right? It's a kind of interesting when you do role playing and you encourage people to kind of think creatively.
Yes.
And the only requirement is knowing how to speak English, right?
Yeah, it's one of those easy things, but it's hard because everything else in adult life is so hard. So it's like, what do you mean? I just have to relax and use my imagination like I'm
Just
five? That's
use
it.
your
That's all you
imagination,
have to do.
right?
So
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the show, giving us a demo, and building this tool set because I feel like it will help everyone to get in alignment with how we're communicating with the users, helping content designers to communicate with their users through the product and be more comfortable with having that shift, whether it be for a chatbot experience or for an AI experience. And I think it's just pushing that envelope further, which is something that I'd always like to celebrate. So I want to thank you for that, Tom. I also want to give you an opportunity if anyone wants to reach out to you to let them know how they can do that.
Sure. Well, the easiest way to find me online is my website, which is just tomresing.com. So TOMRESING.com. I've got in the header links to other ways to contact me, email, LinkedIn. And the way you found this conversational sketching idea was from my LinkedIn profile. This is my first featured post up there right now. If you have a hard time finding it, searching the Figma community, you can get to it right there from my LinkedIn as well.
I'll also have the link in the show notes for you guys. So it'll be very accessible for you. It's the content designer in me. Thank you so much, Tom, and you guys have a great one.
Thanks, Janiessa.
I hope that you've enjoyed our exploration of content design's evolution. We spoke about the context of AI and conversational experiences, the importance of understanding user needs, the role of collaboration in design, and so much more. If you'd like to continue this conversation with Tom and or access the Figma tool, I've placed the information in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe on the platform of your choice. This show was written and produced by me, Janiessa Norice, while editing and post-production is done by Digital Sunflower. Until next time, turn your problems into opportunities.